Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today, watching our teaching series, wherever you're at in the world, or if you come back later on afterwards and watch it, or on YouTube. I just uploaded yesterday all my YouTube things that I've been a little behind on. I think it was just a couple of them, but they're on there. So we appreciate you being here, and I hope you're enjoying your winter. There's been some tough winter, but there's been some pretty winter days too. So we're expecting a nice one today. So we're continuing our study on the book of Acts. Well, I started it last week, so if you didn't get to hear it last week, I encourage you to go back to that and kind of catch up. As I always tell everybody, I'm not reading the King James Bible, so if you have your Bibles out and expecting to be following along with me, you might as well just close it because I'm using it more on a metaphysical, allegorical, parabolical translation understanding. And so the whole thing's about an awareness. And I was talking to Donna last week, and she made a comment that, everything we're teaching is the same thing over and over. Basically it is, but there's different pictures that we're seeing it from, different understandings. And the truth is, when we went to church, we heard the same stories over and over and over, didn't we? Every year we heard the same stories, and pretty much there was no change in those at all. So there's so many different stories in the Bible. I just published my book on the book of Daniel, and all about the Nebuchadnezzar and everything. It's really powerful. It's really interesting. So we left off last week with verse 9. So today we're going to start with Acts 1 verse 10. Let me get a little sip here and we'll get after it. So Jesus had ascended out of their sight. He didn't necessarily go up somewhere, but he ascended out of their sight. And it says, while their awareness remained fixed on the space of awareness where Jesus was lifted, two messengers in radiant garments of light stood beside them, awakening their perception. So at this point of the story, we see the disciples still focused on what their physical eyes can observe. And that's where most people in most religions, we base everything on what we see physically. So Jesus being lifted from their view and perception, gazing upward symbolizes this tendency to always depend on carnal awareness, always looking outward for answers, outward for signs, outwards for safety, looking for somebody to come help us, if you would. But breath always redirects us inward. If we're really listening to the voice of breath, the voice of Elohim, spirit, if you want to say it, it's always inward. Don and I were watching a documentary yesterday. What's his name? The actor?
Will Smith.
Yeah, Will Smith. Will Smith, From Pole to Pole. It's really good. From the North Pole to the South Pole. But he went through a real struggle at the Oscars last year and pretty much probably almost lost his career. And so he took off to really try to find himself. And he was in Tibet. I knew you were going to be here. He had gone to Tibet and to the monasteries, and every place he went, they told him to go within. And no matter what religion it is, if it's a true spiritually seeking religion, they always say go within. They know that it's not without. People say, well, he's here or he's there or whatever, but it's within with us. So we're on verse 10, Nikki. So the two messengers are not simply beings that are religion titles angels in appearance. They represent illuminated thoughts. They represent divine ideas. They represent principles of truth that stir us out of outward dependence and back into the inner awareness. And their white garment symbolizes clarity and purity and perception and a consciousness of righteousness. Righteous just means upright. In a Song of Solomon, I quote this all the time, but Solomon wrote that we came into this world upright. Well, what happened to us? Well, man came up with all kinds of contrivances and things and doing things and religions and everything else, and it kind of skewed or twisted our awareness of who we are. And so white metaphysically always symbolizes the light of understanding or enlightened awareness, righteousness, upright, and understanding. And then, of course, darkness represents lack of understanding. When it says the whole earth was covered with darkness, it means a lack of understanding. And, you know, the whole earth, a lot of places there is nothing but darkness. A lot of people have no understanding, especially when you get into the religions of the world that are always looking without. So these two messengers stood beside them. That means they were already present. They were already near. They were already accessible. The answers, if you would, the directions, the truth that we seek, it's not far off. It's already within us. We already possess the divine mind. And so they stand quietly within our awareness, waiting to be seen when we stop looking without. And it's up to us. We have to get to where we stop looking without. We have to get to where we begin to question our theology. And I have several people that I'm mentoring a lot, and they tell me how they go to people and they try to explain things to them and they get mad at them. And I'll say, well, then evidently they're not questioning their theology. And if they're not questioning theology, you need to leave them alone. You know, minister to them out of what you know, but you don't have to tell them everything you know. Don't try to change people that don't want to be changed. That's like trying to wake a child up that doesn't want to be woke up. They're going to fight you. So the disciples gazing represents this old awareness, this religious belief that divinity is up there somewhere. That someday there's going to be a God that's going to come take care of us and fix these things. And that's where we've been most of our life, particularly if you were raised in church. But the voice of these messengers will soon be challenging that, and they'll be calling them to recognize that the same awareness that they saw in Jesus is meant to rise in them, not go anywhere, but meant to rise in them. And we're doing the same thing. We're calling people to rise up. We're calling people to awaken up. The answer for all your problems is to get up and move. You know, physically, there's a lot of people, particularly when we get older, that we start having a lot of ailments, and the first thing doctors ask us, how much walking are you doing? You know, are you sitting in your recliner? My chiropractor always tells me that my recliner is my worst enemy, but it's comfortable. You know, so that's kind of an answer everywhere, is get up and rise up in your awareness, and rise up and get out of that misery you've been in, get out of that fear that you've been in. So Acts 1:10 reveals then this transitional moment in consciousness that those people who were following Jesus, literally, these messengers pointed them to get rid of that dependency on Jesus, but follow what he taught. And that's why I say, these people on Facebook that it said they follow me, they're not following me, they're following what I'm teaching. And I don't want people to follow me, but I do want you to follow what I'm teaching. And I would like for you to come every once in a while to our place here. So, but the departure of Jesus from the side of the disciples is not the end of his visibility. It is the beginning of one's spiritual vision. And that's what's important. I don't believe you can really walk in true spiritual vision as long as you're looking for a visible Jesus to come back someday, or a visible God to come, or us to go to visible God. Because it's all about something out there. You're waiting for something to come to you, and you don't realize that you are everything that Jesus was. You are everything that Elohim is, as far as the life and the essence and the pureness. We are that. So verse 11. These messengers said, "You devoted men of Galilee, why do you continue looking into the sky? This same breath which you see lifted into the realm of spirit shall be revealed the same in you, in the same manner as inner awareness rises and divine life is made visible through you." I personally believe that these messengers, I believe there were messengers all around. I believe particularly when Jesus came to this, I believe there were messengers from other areas that he was familiar with. I believe they were there to help with the disciples. And because I know they're not angels, because a lot of people don't like me saying it, but there really is no such thing as winged angels. So this verse is a confrontation, if you would, a spiritual confrontation of old awareness. The messengers challenge the disciples. They're challenging that habit of gazing outward, because it is a habit. It's what we're used to, waiting for something to come from without. That could be in all kinds of stuff. People are sometimes they're single, they're having a hard time, they're waiting for some knight in shining armor, or some woman to come or whatever and help them. It's always, and literally, there's nothing we can't do if we realize that within inside of us is the power of life. Within inside of us is abundant life. So this message is very clear. Stop looking beyond and look within. And people ask me all the time, well, how do you go within? Well, you just be quiet. You focus your hearing on the voice within inside of you. You listen for truth. And when you practice that, the more and more you begin to start hearing that voice speak to you. I've told y'all a story 100 times about Donna saying, God said this and God said that, and I never heard anything. But you know what I was doing? I was busy. I was busy in my job. I was busy about doing the work of ministry, all that other stuff. But Donna would carve out time, even though she had 3 children, she would carve out time to get alone. Many times I would find her in the closet at night with a blanket over her head to scare me half to death. But she would go to the restroom and lay in a bathtub and relax and read or meditate or whatever. That was going within, right? Because what's without sometimes is clutter, and it hinders you from hearing spiritual truth. So they address them as men of Galilee, and the name Galilee in the Hebrew means circle or circuit. It's often pictured as a cycle of the outer boundary. So metaphysically, it represents going around and around truth, but never entering in. And there are a lot of people that way today. They'll listen to a little truth. They'll come to me. I have some friends that'll come to me and they listen to me and they think it sounds really cool, but they never enter in because they're always drawn to that which is without. The type of worship that makes you feel good, that makes you cry, the message that they're used to hearing all the time, and then saying amen to it. So that's what this represents. So it's a cycle of dependency on other things and not spiritual maturity. So why do you stand gazing into heaven? Heaven here is not a place somewhere else, but heaven is the divine mind. And this gazing into an external place is an illusion where people believe that Elohim resides, that God resides, if you would. So the question is a spiritual prompt. Why are you still seeking what has already been given to you? And that's real important to us because we do have a true supply. We do have all things that pertain to life and godliness right now. So why is it that you're still seeking that to come to you by reward? By if you give enough, you'll get blessed. Or if you do enough, or you're just waiting for Father to reward you, or whatever it is. Why are you seeking that? The reason why is because you don't believe you have it right now. You don't understand that you have it right now. So this question here then is why are you looking for a son out there when the actual appearing must take place in you? Why have all our life we've been looking for Jesus to come back someday? And the fact that we were doing that robbed us from the appearing that was already within inside of us, that we felt like we needed Jesus to do something. And this phrase, this same breath, refers to the Logos life that's within inside of us. We literally are the living Logos. We are the creative spiritual movement and action that in us that reveals the law of abundant life. And I always say, if what you're reading, what you're studying, what you're hearing in your fellowship or whatever religion you're in, if it's not revealing the law of abundant life, then it's not the Logos. Because we do have abundant life. Even though it may not look like it, it may not feel like it, it's ours. And we have to stop by going what we feel and go by what we know. So this same life is in every person. It will not be different in one person and another person. When it appears, it's that same divine life that was in Jesus, and now it's beginning to rise in all people who are beginning to awaken all over the world. And I believe there's a massive amount of people doing that, more than we even know. So then the statement shall come in like manner does not mean a physical return to the sky. It means that in that same spiritual way that he lowered his visibility, if he need be, he can come again and he can raise his visibility if he needed to. And I believe Jesus appeared. I know he did. He appeared after his leaving the disciples. He came back for 40 days and 40 nights. There's records of him going to Ethiopia, to India, to all kinds of places in the world. So this verse speaks directly to the sacred self of modern mankind. It declares that the second appearing of Jesus is not a return to earth, but it's this appearing of the breath within inside of us. It's we begin to appear just like Jesus appeared. We go into people's lives. We have divine appointments. We minister to people. We give them answers that they've been seeking for. And it's so real, it's so true that they cannot deny it. I've had people themselves say to me, we've had a divine appointment. And I believe there's divine appointments waiting for us all over the world. So the Jesus whom Christians wait for is actually the divine life already planted within inside of us. Everything that Jesus was is inside of us. Every ability Jesus had is inside of us. So it's not something descending from the sky somewhere, but it needs to be recognized, not just believe, because like I've told you before, believe is really not a good word because I'm believing it's going to happen. You know, like I believe Ann and Carl love us, you know, and I believe that if something happened, they would take care of us or whatever, but that's different than recognizing it and just knowing it, and I'm not depending on it. It's just, I just recognize we are one. So believing means I believe something can happen. Recognizing means I know it's right now, and it's part of my life. So I know no matter where I teach the Bible now, and the Word, I know no matter what story I'm teaching, I know it's all the same thing. It literally is about this awakening to who we are. And when you do that, then like I say, the Bible becomes a whole new book to you. And it has to me. And I don't say throw it away, but I say if you're going to just keep reading it just the way it is, you might as well, because it's not helping you. But I say find somebody that can help you understand it and begin to read it from the spiritual view of it, which is the code, which is the agape love of Father, and the symbolism of the Word. What kind of awareness is it about? And what is the code? If it's not love, then it's either a false translation or false perception. All right? So Acts 1, verse 12 through 14. Then they return in awareness to the sacred place of inward peace, which is called Jerusalem, a short spiritual distance from the realm of outer questioning. That's the Mount of Olives. And when they entered into the upper room of contemplation, they remained in union and stillness, along with Peter, John, James, Andrews, Philip, Thomas, Bartholomew, Matthew, James, the son of Alphaeus, Simon, the one passionate with zeal, and Judas, the son of James. These all continued with one focused intention and harmony of thought and devotion with this feminine principle, which is represented by Mary, the mother of Jesus, and with other women, who now began to turn inward and to awaken. And that's what took place there. That's later on we're going to talk again about, that's when they had the flames of fire around their head. That's the Logos word. That's the understanding that was coming to them. So this return to Jerusalem marks this inward journey back to conscious peace and spiritual centering, if you would. Jerusalem means dwelling of peace or foundation of wholeness. It's not a geographical place, but it's the sacred place within inside of us. It's the place where divine presence is fully known. And it's so important for us to know that we are the presence of Elohim. If Elohim, if breath, if spirit's going to be anywhere in the world, it's in mankind. And so we bring that everywhere we go. And so that's why I call ourselves sacred selves, because we are sacred. We are holy. So they returned from the Mount of Olives, which means a place of pressing or pressure. And that's named for the olive tree and how the oil's produced. And the mountain pictures the outer realm where spiritual truth is challenged, if you would. And they return from that. And so when you do go out into the world, particularly if you go out into a religious type of world system, spiritual truth is challenged and it's pressured. And that pressure is always to draw you back to them. You know, come back to the place that you're comfortable. Come back to our belief systems or whatever. But leaving that mountain symbolizes a shift from outer world pressure to this appearance of stillness, the stillness of divine assurance. When you know who you are, you know you have contact with the divine mind, that's when you can be calm and you can be quiet. And that's why I've told you before, when the Bible, where Elohim said, be still and know, the word still means be calm and quiet. Because you can't know if you're demanding, if you're fighting, if you're upset, if you're worried all the time. That's not calm and quiet. And so we have to enter that place. And that the phrase a Sabbath day's journey in the original text suggests a short but sacred space of rest and then an inner transition. Sometimes we have to just kind of get alone and rest. I don't have to do it a lot, but sometimes I even have to rest from my studies. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed with it, and I come in there and I sit down with Donna, or, if it's nice weather or whatever, I'll go out in the backyard for a while and sit on my deck, and I just rest for a while. And I relax my thoughts. And then when I go back, I'm calm, I quiet, and I get down on the path that I'm called to be on. And so this is the return from the outer activity to the inner awareness. It's a spiritual movement. It's that activity again. It's the breath of Ekklesia. And upon entering the room, they entered into this higher state of consciousness. So rest helps you do that. And it is important to rest. Rest your thoughts. And I don't mean necessarily just go take a nap, but I'm just talking about rest your thoughts. And when you do that, then you find yourself more and more in this higher state of consciousness. And the upper room represents that heightened awareness. And that's that place where thoughts are gathered, or they're quieted. That's where we begin to hear breath speak to us more. And there are people that still tell me they don't hear the voice of breath yet. Well, and I tell them, then you need to spend more time in calmness and quiet and just being still and wait. And the truth is, you do hear it, but there's too much clutter up there. There's too much wanting things. You want to hear certain things too. Like, I'm going to help you. I'm going to bail you out, whatever it is. So in Acts 2:3, we see the disciples, again, experiencing these flames of fire going around their heads, which was symbolic of the divine communication with the divine awareness. They began to understand the things that Jesus told them. And that was unveiling this awareness, and it was emanating from their divine mind. It wasn't physical fire. It wasn't tongues of fire. It was the Logos. And I have that happen when I study all the time. I'll just all of a sudden, this is what this means. This is what this means. And it begins to awaken within inside of me. So when it said cloven tongues like as a fire, it denotes a spiritual experience, and their awareness was quickened by revelation. It enables them to perceive and ultimately integrate these truths that Jesus had already spoken. Kay can tell you quite often during the week, I call her when I'm studying, I'm translating. There's this something that just really quickens me that I saw in the Word, and I want to share it with her. And it's the Logos, and it's exciting. And so Mary and the other women with them, Mary represents the divine feminine principle, which is the receptive consciousness that conceives, if you would. It brings forth spiritual truth. She's the mother awareness of Jesus, meaning she symbolizes the field of awareness from which the Logos was birthed. Mary Magdalene also speaks of that same principle. I believe Mary was a very spiritual woman, and Mary Magdalene and Mary, Jesus' mother. Of course, I've told you Mary was taught by the Essenes. I believe Mary Magdalene was also, and other people. And so when they were in Jesus' life, they were there to assist him. They were there to help him. And so the inclusion of the other women affirms the divine awareness is not limited to just masculine expression. And the translators of the Bible tried to make it that way. Even in churches today, women are not allowed to do anything. It's sad, except for take care of baby care. Huh?
Some churches.
Helpers?
Some churches.
Oh, yeah.
Some churches, not all churches.
Yeah, some churches.
Some churches, women do everything.
Yeah, they do. I'm talking about ministry-wise, to preach and things like that.
About ministry-wise.
So sadly, the translators chose to omit a lot of the women's names. that were in the Bible. And I told you I found a book of Jubilees that had them all listed, and that's what I used in my genealogy book. But Mary Magdalene was a very intimate friend of Jesus, and some people say that they were ended up married, and I don't doubt that at all. And there was other women like Salome, there was Joanna, there was Susanna, and possibly others not named, including wives and sisters of the apostles. They were all very spiritual. So finally, his brothers now begin to awaken, Jesus' brothers. These are the aspects of awareness that once doubted, are held in separate beliefs, are now returning to this inner sanctuary. They're ready to be transformed. They're ready to be made new. You know, it is difficult for brothers and sisters to accept a spiritual side of their siblings sometimes. It was very difficult, particularly for my brother. My sister, my younger sister was, but my older sister and my brother, it was difficult for them because they just saw me as Roy, you know. And so the same thing would happen with Jesus there too. And so we see here in these verses the sacred pattern of preparation for transformation. It pictures this return again to inner stillness. That's the biggest pattern for transformation, where you can gather your divine faculties together, and this harmony of the masculine and the feminine coming together. And the sacred self is coming to alignment. And when that happens, we're ready for the voice of breath to bring full remembrance of our oneness, because that's what we need to do, is we need to remember that we've always been one with Father. When we were born, we knew that, but some things happen that cause us to forget. Okay, verse 15 through 19. And in those days, Peter, which means faith rising in leadership, stood in the midst of the gathered awareness, about 120 in spiritual measure, and said, "My consecrated brothers and sisters, it was necessary that the scripture in inner truth be fulfilled, which the breath of the Holy spoke beforehand through David's awareness, concerning Judas, who became a guide to the thoughts that arrested and held back awakened understanding. For he was once numbered with and shared in this ministry as spiritual expression. This one, by consequences of mistaken perception, acquired a field," and we're talking about Judas, that, you know, turned Jesus in, acquired a field, and falling headlong, he became overwhelmed by shame, and all of his inner being was poured out. And this became known in all the levels of awareness dwelling in Jerusalem. So the field was called in the native tongue, Akklesia. I said that, now I can't say it. Akkledam. This is to say, the field of consequences. Now, Nikki, do you know who I'm talking about? Judas? Judas is the one that betrayed Jesus, right? And he went out and hung himself. So that's who I'm talking about here. So Peter rises in the midst. Peter here, who metaphysically represents faith, he stands in leadership. True faith always rises when breath begins to move. When we have faith, not in me, but I have faith in Elohim's faith in me. So when breath begins to move, we begin to rise with it. We don't doubt. We don't wonder. We move with it. The number 120 is very spiritually symbolic. It represents completion of a preparatory cycle, if you would. 10 is the symbol of divine order. Times 12 is spiritual government. That's divine faculties. And it suggests that all faculties are now gathered together in harmony. And I've talked to you about the faculties of the disciple: love, self-will, faithfulness. It's all gathering together, ready to be empowered by the breath of Spirit. It's just like the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit is just love. All those other things are attributes. When you love, that gathers self-control. It gathers faith. It gathers all those things together, where you can function totally out of those, and literally you can change your world. Because again, that all functions through us. We are where the movement of breath flows. Not from out somewhere else, not from coming down from the sky, but through us. And that's why I encourage people, when you go out into your world, make sure you're aware that you might be going there for something different than you think you're going for. Be open and be ready to bless people. Be ready to give an answer. Be ready to give a hug. Whatever it is, you have divine appointments. And that's why Jesus said it's better to give than to receive. He wasn't talking about money, but he was talking about it's better to give of your breath to others than receive from other people. I don't want to be in need of that. What I would like to receive is hugs. I like to receive fellowship. But I don't want to be the one that's always needing something in my life. I want to be the one that's pouring out. I want to be the giver, not the borrower, right? Because borrowing actually speaks of, I was looking it up today, borrowing actually speaks from borrowing somebody else's identity. There are a lot of people that do that. They borrow somebody's identity and they try to live out of who they are. And that's become their source, and we don't want to do that. So the midst here refers to the center of conscious awareness, not just a physical space, but faith is rising in the midst means that the inner conviction begins to guide the collective, the understanding of all those present. And so that's what was going on in this upper room, that this faith began to rise up and it began to guide them. And so Peter speaks of Judas not to condemn him, but to reveal the spiritual necessity of transformation. Judas represents the awareness that betrays truth, the faculty that once walked with spiritual understanding, but becomes entangled in external award. He was wanting Jesus to rule the earth. He was wanting Jesus to be their king. He was wanting an outward king, if you would, or an outward person to have a relationship with spiritually. His name means praise, though, and he was the praise that betrayed. He betrayed the life within inside of him because he thought he could do something to get Jesus to act, but he thought he could do something about himself, and that's why he hung himself. So this reference to David points to this inner voice of love as spiritual leadership, and it's an allegory. David symbolizes the heart awareness that's turned toward Father, and the idea that even in inner conflicts, we can still turn towards the voice of breath. And literally, we can speak at the voice of breath. And the idea that even through these conflicts, breath continues to speak truth and preparing us for a healing of our awareness and our restoration of our awareness. So Judas had a place among the apostles, showing that every divine faculty is designed for a sacred purpose. But when one aspect of awareness becomes self-seeking, then it gets entangled in false identity, and it can cause problems. So it was once shared in the ministry, reminding us that even when our mistakes were part of the journey toward remembering, that they won't stop us if we don't allow them to. We've all made mistakes. We've all lived with a mistaken identity, but they won't stop us and they can't hold us back if we just recognize what they are. And it was what does the Bible call one of the words for sin? It's just a mark missing. It's a mark missing. It's not going to destroy me, but I'm going to let it go and I'm going to go on. It's like the fruit of the Spirit is love. Without love, it's impossible for the other attributes to function. And so literally we have to learn to love ourselves. Yes. One of the first things we have to do is kind of forgive ourselves and realize, you know what, I'm not the only one that ate too much ice cream. Yes. Carl does too, and Ann wants to. But I think we beat ourselves up so much because we've had these religious rules put over us that you've got to live this way and you've got to do that or whatever it is. And it's very difficult, and most of us failed at all that. And so we had to let that go. And then when we do, the joy and the peace and the long suffering and the kindness and the faithfulness and all of that becomes alive inside of us, but we give it to ourselves too. And love remaining steady is undivided. Love brings gentleness. Love is that moving force, that domination, that self-control. It's a divine order rather than living by impulse. And the other attributes, they're not behaviors, they're practices of outwardly manifestations. And when you love, they just naturally show up. When you really love people, you don't have to try it, it just shows up. You're patient with them. You know, I've been around a lot of teachers in the past that people that just couldn't get it, they would get upset with them. And you can't do that. Love allows time.
Your children.
Huh?
What if children because you love your children
Yes.
more than anything, you know.
That's right.
So you're more patient. You know, you have a lot more joy when you know,
Right.
with your children.
Right. That's true. I've always said I want patience and I want it right now. So it's the symbolic death of the ego, if you would, the ego awareness, that thought it could profit from truth or control divine activity. That's what Judas pretty much pictures. He thought he could control Jesus by causing these things to happen and get Jesus to act the way he thought it was going to happen. So Judas acquired this Akadema field, meaning field of blood, and in traditional texts, it's better understood as field of consequences. Blood here represents kinship rather than oneness. It's just kind of a kinship. Well, kinships, you know, I can be kin with you, but I don't own everything you have. I'm not one with you, I'm just kin. But oneness is everything. So here it also points to what is revealed when the logos, when the ego collapses, when the ego no longer helps you or whatever, and you realize that you've been going down the wrong road. The consequences of mistaken identity then becomes a field, a territory known as all aspects of self, producing it. It's one where skewed awareness is broken then, and that's when it begins to fall apart. And that's when we need to realize that this teaches that no part of us really is hidden. What we believe and act upon, though, is maybe unknown to others, but we know what's going on in our life. And when we feed on truth, all of a sudden that collapses in our life. And then we become free to that. And that's not punishment, though. It's a cleansing. It's a clearing. It's a preparation for spiritual function. And I went through that most of my life. You know, all these different journeys of awareness, awakening, there were things I had to let go of. I had to be cleansed in my life. Attitudes, memories of the past, things that were done to me, belief systems, whatever it is. And so again, it's not punishment, but it's just it's a removing, it's a cleansing, it's a clearing, and getting rid of the clutter. And the clutter is usually all the voices up here all the time.
Amen.
Okay? What time is it? Okay. So Acts 1:15 through 19 reveals this inner drama of what happens when faith rises and the betrayal is brought into light. When faith rises and faith in Father's faith in us, then we realize the things that's been going on in our life that's betraying us, that's robbing us, it's brought to light, and we're able to let it go. And the collapse of Jesus' awareness is not condemnation. It's the release of what no longer serves us. It's not fighting it. It's not rebuking it. It's just saying, this no longer serves me anymore, and I just let it go. You know, it can be about a relationship. There are relationships that are a struggle. A lot of men and women, and men and women, they have relationships that there's always struggle all the time, and there comes a time where you just realize, this doesn't serve me anymore. I don't hate the person. You know, I'm not going to be mean to the person, but I'm just going to let this relationship go. And it fits that way in all kinds of stuff. Until then, you can't have much clarity in your life. All right, we'll do one more. Acts 1:20 through 26. Unless I get excited and do one more. You know what? I'm almost done. Let's just go ahead and do it. Okay. For it is written in the scroll of the sacred songs, let the habitation of that mistaken faculty become desolate, and that no voice dwell in it. You get that right there? Let it become desolate, and let another rise into its sacred place of function. Therefore, from among those who have walked in conscious awareness with us from the days of John's immersion in water, John the Baptist, until the day when the pattern sun was lifted into spiritual realization, one must be seen and known as a full participant in this divine unveiling. Such a one must be living witness with us of the rising of consecrated awareness life, having received an inner vision of what resurrection truly means. And they placed before the inner community two, Joseph, now this is talking about replacing Judas, is what this is talking about. They placed before the inner community two, Joseph called Barsabbas, who was also named Justus, and Matthias. And they turned within and said, breath of holy presence, you see clearly the heart of every awareness. Reveal which of these two you have chosen to rise in spiritual purpose, to take the portion of function and service from which Judas turned away, that he might go into the realm of separation and confusion. And they gave their choice as an act of spiritual agreement, and the choice revealed Matthias, and he was numbered with 11, completing the circle of sent ones. So this verse pictures the sacred principle that when an aspect of awareness is no longer serves divine purpose, it must be released. It must be released. The habitation is a conscious space. It's a place in our awareness was once occupied by divine faculty, if you would. Judas, symbolizing betrayal or egoic ambition, had to be removed from this function so that a new faculty can arise. That's what that pictures to us. And that's that letting go of the old so what's always been there can rise up. So let another take the office is not about replacing a man, but it's about restoring spiritual order. And that's what I've been working on most of my last 20 years or 30 years of my life, is to restore spiritual order. I can't tell you I understood totally what that was, but when it began is when I told Kay in our fellowship, Father is telling we need to learn how to live out of our spiritual resources. Because I was never taught how to live out of my spirit. I was never taught that I was spirit, that I was breath. We were always seeking the Holy Spirit. Well, that was completely in disorder, out there somewhere. So Judas symbolizes betrayal or egoic ambition. And so, again, let another take the office is every divine idea must operate in harmony with the divine mind. And that's what I want. I want all my thoughts, all my thinkings, everything I teach, everything I write, all my relationships to be in harmony with the divine mind. Because when it is, there's nothing but peace. There's nothing but joy. There's nothing but love. Someone has walked in this unfolding of spiritual truth. And so from John's immersion, it represents this outer turning from old awareness, John the Baptist. That was more of an old baptism of repentance from sin. So then to the ascension, which means the complete rising here into oneness with Father, we become a witness of this, what this resurrection means. It means the seeing of the sacred self raised. We are raised. We are living. We're not a dust dweller anymore. We're not living in a carnal realm. We're not living with carnal thoughts anymore. It means perceiving truth, a spiritual life, which never died. I mean, it was always there. We never lost what we had. We just didn't know we had it. You know, it's like somebody wrote on a post today about that coin. Well, the coin was never lost. The owner just didn't know where it was at. You know, I love how Donna sometimes, one time I lost something, she said, well, where was you when you lost it? Because it's still there. So it's not lost. You just have to remember where was it? Well, the problem is we didn't know because we didn't know we had it. You know, so Jesus came to save that which was lost. Well, that wasn't us. That was our understanding. That how did we lose it? Because we were put in the hands of religiosity. You know, and I have nothing against those people. I love them. I love all my brethren. And I just pray that they wake up. I want the whole world to wake up. That's what needs to happen. This world's never going to perish. It's always going to be here. And until more and more people wake up, it's always going to be the way it is. But I have great hope that there's so many people, more than I've ever seen in my life, that are seeking real truth. And just because we want somebody to, they may not be ready yet. But we need to say, here I am, Lord, send me. Help me to meet somebody at Walmart today. Help me to meet somebody while I'm pumping gas. The other day, a young mailman came out here. He's not my normal mail person. It's a lady. And he was bringing my book on Acts. And he said, man, this is heavy. What is it? And I said, you know, it opened it up. And I said, this is one of my, and I opened it up and showed it to him. I said, this is a book that I did on the book of Acts. I'm a metaphysical teacher. And he said, are you kidding me? And I said, no. I said, do you know what that is? And he said, yeah, it's other than physical, it's spiritual. And I said, well, how do you know that? He said, because my mom studies that and she's looking for a place for preacher teaches metaphysical understanding. I mean, we had a divine appointment right then. And so I began to share things to him, and I said, did you ever go to church? And he said, no, I quit a long time ago. I said, good boy. But I'm glad he did, because he doesn't have to have a lot of stuff to undo, and now his mom is teaching him. And so it can happen anywhere. It can happen when you're walking down the street. If you're willing, something will trigger the voice, and the voice will be able to speak. And there's nothing like it. And it truly is better to give than to receive. So here we are. To be a witness of resurrection means more than just us raised. It means perceiving the truth of spiritual life, which never died, and realize that I had a resurrection experience. I had a day of the Lord. I had a last day of the Lord, and I keep having them. And that's when my eyes get get more spiritual sight. I see more. I understand more. And this is the qualification of spiritual function. It's inner sight, not outer memory. Inner sight. So we meet Joseph now, also known as Barsabbas, and Justus or Matthias. Each name carries a special meaning. Joseph means he will add. So metaphysically, that's a principle of increase and multiplication of divine ideas. Then Barsabbas is the son of Sabbath. It symbolizes rest and completeness, or possibly rigid religious rest, if you would. And then Justus represents just or righteous. It represents outward righteousness or appearance of correctness. Sometimes people can see you and there's just something about you that's attracting them to you, and that's an appearance of correctness, an uprightness. Matthias means the gift of Yah, or gift of the divine, and that pictures spiritual movement. It pictures a selection of the divine initiation and an inner qualification. So the presence of two names here indicates a duality of function, a divided awareness between outward righteousness and inward rest. Matthias, contrast, represents a single breath-filled function or divine faculty ready to operate, turning within. They converse not to an external deity, but to the divine mind. So the conversation affirms that only breath knows the true intention, and readiness of faculty. So they're not voting by preference, but they're attentively listening for spiritual direction. And that's how they pick Matthias. So Matthias is chosen, meaning the gift of the divine has been received. And with his inclusion, the number 12 is restored now. And that pictures a full cycle of spiritual faculties now aligned and prepared for this inner flow in Acts chapter 12. And so Acts 1:20 through 26 teaches this principle of the divine faculties must be rightly aligned. And like love is the foundation for all of it. And so it's important for us to realize that these faculties, they work in our lives, and if something's out of order, maybe one of those faculties are not aligned. It could be your faith may be lacking. Your faith may be in you instead of Father's faith in you, or whatever it is. And so when they're exposed and removed in spiritual movement, we begin to function. And so I say to people, if you're struggling, you feel like you're not spiritually attuned, you feel like you're not moving the way you need to, be still, be calm, be quiet, and let breath reveal to you what is it that's out of line in my life. When I go to a doctor's office, I let them tell me what's out of line. It could be I'm low on iron, or I'm low on this, and or I'm low on exercise. I know that's one of them for sure. But so it causes this full circle awareness to be restored. So at the close of Acts chapter 1, the masculine, feminine principle is quietly been clearly revealed, not as gender, but as the divine function of awakened awareness. That's what Jesus revealed to us, this divine function flowing through him. And the Logos movement, the receptive sacred self, it's teaching us that before an outward activity of acts unfolds, there must be this balance. Before these guys and these women went out and began to do the work of the Ekklesia, they had to be balanced perfectly. And within them, there was this expression that's getting ready to explode. And the book of Acts is not about going forth and healing the blind, healing people that are paralyzed. It's not about healing people at all. It's about going out and teaching the Logos of the Word to the masses. And that's what they did. And we're going to see some powerful things that you really don't see in the King James Bible, how they function totally out of who they are, and they changed their world. And even the Apostle Paul, and I think I said it before, but I always thought the Apostle Paul died of having his head chopped off. I'd heard it all my life in my studies, and I come to the end of the book, and it's not there, and I just thought, what's the deal here? And I began to study, and it was just a tradition. It wasn't true. And I remember Brother Garner, years ago, he told us that he had a book, an old book, that said Paul lived an old life. That meant he lived a long, long time. And what happened, I'm jumping way ahead, but he had been accused by the Jews. They wanted him dead. They wanted to kill him. They hated him just like they did Jesus. And so he was arrested, taken to various places, and then he went to Felix, and Felix listened to him, and he told his story, and he told how he used to be a Pharisee of Pharisees and all that, and I am of Rome. If you're of Rome, they couldn't beat him like they beat him. And he appealed to Caesar. And he said, if you hadn't appealed to Caesar, I would have let you go. But since you appealed to Caesar, I've got to send you. Well, when he went to Caesar, he was expecting to be persecuted by the Jews. He wasn't. He thought they would have letters from the other ones, and they did not send anything. Caesar didn't know why he was there. The Jews didn't know why he was there. They wasn't upset with him. He rented a house, and he was there for many years writing his books and teaching people. So a lot of stuff that we were taught is not true. And I believe Paul totally walked out of who he was just like Jesus did. I've always believed that. So we got a lot to see. So I hope you enjoyed today. Appreciate you being with us. We love you very much. If any of you have questions, feel free to write me on Messenger. If you'd like to be part of the transcript group where I send out the transcripts every other week or so, let me know and I'll do that for you. I'm going to be doing a chapter at a time, so those of you who are a part of that, I'll send a chapter at a time. It'd be a lot easier than breaking all this up. So we love you, we bless you, we thank you for all your comments, and have a great day. See you next week.